Welcome into the special CBS42.com podcast. I'm Sebastian Posey. I'm also here with Josh Zavadil.
I am right next to him.
Hey, Josh. We are in today with Mark Prater, a meteorologist for us here at CBS42.com and CBS42 as well, talking about April 27th. We're coming up on the anniversary of it, the 3-year anniversary of it, which boggles my mind how it's already been 3 years. But that's going to be this weekend. And so we wanted to sit down with Mark Prater, who was on air for how many hours?
Honestly, I don't remember. I mean, we started at 3:15 that morning, and probably I would say, about 18 to 20.
So almost a full day Mark was on air. So we wanted to sit down and talk with him about the storm and everything that's happened since. So just getting right into it, Mark. You guys can forecast things up to 10, 14 days out. I imagine even longer out, what were the models telling you going into that storm?
It was pretty blatant that we were going to see severe weather. There was no question. It was that time of the year, and everything was kind of lining up. And when you see stuff more than 3 to 4 days out, you have to take it with a grain of salt, because as a forecaster, doing this for 25 years, I've learned that those long-range forecasts are a pretty good guesstimate, but you're trying to forecast a river of air, basically, and that's what our atmosphere is, and it's moving all the time, and you're trying to forecast where it's going to change and where it will start to make a whirlpool, which is like a low pressure, or where a boulder might be, which is a high pressure. So you really have to just watch them carefully and do some comparison. But on that particular week, I think 4 days out, I was really starting to get confident, as was I think the National Weather Service and my other two Mets, Kaylee Dion and of course Ted McInerney.
All right, going into that day, so you've been forecasting it, and I remember, because I was here at the time, I remember the day before you being on air talking about, we're looking at a good chance of severe weather tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So going into April 27th, that morning, take us back to that morning, just what you were doing when you first arrived to the station, just everything at the beginning, what was going on through your head?
Well, the first wave that went through, which actually killed half a dozen people, which is a huge deal. I mean, 6 of our neighbors died from severe weather in one line, and that was with a tornado that went through Cahaba Heights and, right there through Mountain Brook, or very close to it. That night before, we knew we were going to have severe weather. I'd already put a plan into motion. I already had people designated for different spots, and what I called an arc of defense. It's almost, it was something that I'm a huge fan of, the art of war, just because it's so creative. But that was an arc of defense that I set up and had people in different locations. So in the event things started changing and it was in one given area, I could pull people back and help reinforce who was already out there. So that way we'd have more people and more views of it. But little did I know everybody would have one. And that's really, that was bizarre, needless to say, but rare. And that night before, I tried to get some sleep, and I'd been asleep for about 45 minutes, and my phone started buzzing, and it was Kaylee Dion, and she said, "Hey, look, we got tornado warnings. They're about to cross the state line from a squall line." Well, none of us saw the squall line developing and coming through. Nobody in the business did. National Weather Service, us in television, nobody. And that thing came roaring through like 75 miles per hour. It was insanely strong. But it did move into the state, so I came in and drove right through U.S. Highway 280 coming up, right through where that tornado would go through. And it did, not long after that. But I got in, we did those warnings, and then after we realized we had damage, I had to go home and change. I still was wearing, stuff that I'd worn the day before, because I'm thinking it's not going to be that long. And when I left the station here that day, I was driving back 280, and it was log jammed. And every direction I went, it was log jammed. And the amount of cars on 280 in all these directions, everywhere, was log jammed. Nobody was moving. It took me an hour and a half to get home on a 9 or 10 mile trip, which normally takes about 15 minutes. So I went home, changed, showered, because I knew we had a big afternoon coming. And when I went home, I got all that done very quickly. packed up some stuff in case I was going to be here a couple of days, jumped back out the front door, locked it, and looked up and saw nothing but blue sky. And as a meteorologist, with the setup we had, that's the last thing you want to see is sunshine. And that's when I got sick to my stomach, literally sick to my stomach in my driveway. That's because I knew that was the last ingredient that you needed. Everything else was in place, but that heat was going to be, that's going to make everything explode like a bomb. So after I kind of got myself together, I drove back to work and came up 65 and got here in about 30 minutes, and it got very quiet, but we made sure everybody was in place, and after that we just waited. And I remember going and laying down for about 15-20 minutes on a couch in our transmitter, which is a storage room at the time, just because I was exhausted and I hadn't slept most of the night and I had to get some type of rest. And we were going to do shifts. So since I was doing evenings at the time, that was the thing, you know, the best thing to do, let them finish their shifts and then I'll pick up and they could go get a break. And once we had a warning in Mississippi, it wasn't long after that I came in, and you know, it's hard to explain how fast it happens, but it really does happen that quick. You see a little rain shower on the radar, which is so innocent looking, just a little blip of green, and that little rain shower can become a massive tornado over time with all the right ingredients falling into place. So that was, we knew it was only a matter of time, and with that sunshine out, that's what scared me the most. I mean, honestly, I was terrified for people out there. And when I came in, I'm thinking there are people who are alive right now, somewhere in our state, that will be dead by this evening. That was the reality I was dealing with. I knew it was going to be that bad. And once we got started, we had our first warning. Came out of Coleman. That was, they had a tornado. And then I saw a picture of it. And when I saw the picture of it, that's what really concerned me the most, was it had all the structure and all the ingredients for a violent tornado. Not just your small little, you know, whip up that we normally have, F0, F1, F2. They're all dangerous, but it had all the characteristics, large vortices, and that you always see in textbooks. And it was visible. And that was the other thing that concerned me, is most of our tornadoes are wrapped in rain. And when you have a tornado like we did in Tuscaloosa about a week and a half before, the tornado went by but nobody could see it because it was in the middle of a huge rain shaft. Did all this damage, but nobody saw it. So after that got going, then we realized, okay, this is what we're dealing with, and we really got to start to pay attention to every storm. And from then on, I knew it was only going to get worse, but I think the hardest thing was, I remember saying a prayer before I went on the air for the people who were going to die and the families that were going to lose them. That's how real it was to me. That's how rare. I mean, it's not often that I would do something like that, but I knew that it was going to be that bad, and it broke my heart. I just didn't know we would lose 225 of our viewers and our neighbors, and people who watched me and were watching me as I was showing a tornado coming right at them, which still, you know, works on your psyche a little bit, knowing when I got in this business 25 years ago and first walked into a TV station in Troy, Alabama, if you had said, you know, in 25 years you're going to be the last voice, the last person many humans will ever hear or see. That, you know, that's tough. That really, I would have never believed it, but that's what happened.
You kind of hinted at it there a little bit, and there were tornadoes throughout that day in multiple communities. Coleman, you said, being the first. There were even here in Birmingham. But the one that really kind of sticks out in everyone's mind, and Josh can attest to this because he was at the university at the time, is the tornado that hit Tuscaloosa. And I remember vividly that image of you on the wall when this massive thing just hit ground, and it was just tearing through the city, and it was hard for me to watch. I have no idea how you're doing your job looking at that. Like, what's going through your mind when that thing hit at like 5:12, 5:13, whatever time it was?
It's funny because you asked me that, and my response is different than it was when I first saw it start. Because I'd sent Marlon Price, our videographer, and Lee Garner up to a place called Woods and Water, which is the highest point in Tuscaloosa. And I had that responsibility on me. I had all these people that went to places that I sent them. These people have families, you know, this is their life, you know, this is their job, but I'm sending them out in harm's way while I'm going to be standing in a studio. That weighs on, it does for me. But Marlon went up and was sitting in the right spot, and we were very fortunate that he was able to shoot across a ridge line from where the possible tornado was. And I saw it beginning to develop, and there's still some debate on whether that was already on the ground or not, but either way, it didn't matter. We saw the growth of it, and then we lost our shot. And that's when my eyes got big on TV. I'm like, we got to get that back, because people will really believe me now. They will take it seriously if I can show this tornado. And I hear yelling, there's running around, there are people talking in my ear, hang on, we're getting it for you, just hang on. It was chaotic behind the scenes. But I said, just put the radar up, let's talk about it. And that's where we had a classic looking hook echo. And as it moved in on Tuscaloosa, the picture popped back up. They said, we got it. And they took it. And as soon as I saw it, I was like everybody else. It was a whole different tornado than when I first saw it. And my only response was, oh my God, I know what this is about to do. And I explained to my wife, and I explained to coworkers and people that I've spoken with about this. To me, it was equivalent to watching a child run out into a street with a truck flying down the road coming towards them, and you can't get to the child in time to help them. That is exactly what I felt as I saw this tornado headed towards the city. Now granted, you know the city's going to get hit, and I could see it was very, very violent. This was a violent tornado. It was never classified in EF5, but it was close. And I think it could have gone either way, but Jim Stefkovich, a friend of mine who's the meteorologist in charge down at the National Weather Service, he has great people work for him, and they said, it was close, but not quite. And then I'm trying to pinpoint where it is, because that's one thing that you learn doing severe weather in the South, is your radar can tell you a lot, but the radar beam is straight. After 25 miles, the Earth curves. So I knew we were looking higher up into the thunderstorm. So I didn't want to call out specific streets, like, hey, this is going down Skyland Boulevard or wherever, because realistically, you know that it's tilted already. The radar is not going to be quite as accurate. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. But then we have this picture of it, and the video is amazing. And I see where it's headed, and that is the first time in 23 years at that point that I ever got emotional on the air and choked up. And I couldn't help it, because I saw Bryant-Denny Stadium, I saw the water tower, and I saw a hellacious wind tornado that was violent, headed right towards all these kids. Now you got to remember, I've got kids that age. We've got friends of ours that grew up with our kids, spend the night. We know a bunch of people down there, much less our viewers. And that is what really choked me up, because there was nothing I could do to stop it. I just had to stand there and watch, just like everybody else.
And you mentioned that just the image itself was something that you really wanted to get back up there, because now people would believe it, now people would take it seriously. And my brother and I were sitting in our apartment. We had been flipping through the channels. We knew that there was something going on in Tuscaloosa. We had heard the warnings, and we came across that image. And I mean, you say that, but it is very true. We just weeks before had other tornado warnings, and we hadn't even taken them seriously. I mean, we stayed in our front room. We didn't go to go to our bathroom or go to our safe place where we should have gone when they hit. And when we saw that, we were watching, and I remember seeing the water tower, and we lived over by Rosedale. And I knew that it was approaching near where we were, and I could hear stuff outside. And then you mentioned, you need to get to someplace safe. And that's when we went. But I mean, I hear meteorologists say, get to your safe place and stuff like that all the time. But that really was, I mean, just firsthand. I want to thank you for that, because I mean, that was something that if I had not heard that or seen that, my outcome might have been different, as it was for other people in my complex and in the area that I was living.
Well, and I appreciate that. I take a lot of pride in the sense that we were able to help somebody. And, I think a lot of people think we're corny whenever we're talking about, why did you get into weather? Well, I enjoy weather. I think it's fascinating, but also I like to be able to help somebody and maybe save some lives. Well, guess what? We finally had an event that proved the point. That's why I did it. That's why I've gotten into this business. And I can't tell you how many people who I've talked to that were watching like you or Josh, or just locked in and realizing, oh my God, this is real. This is coming right at me. And then I've also had family members of people who died that day, who were, they said, we know that they're watching you. So, it never ceases to amaze me, because the first time I met you, Josh, in the Weather Center, you were just starting here. You told me that story, and it takes me aback every time, because we did it right. We did what we were supposed to, and we did the best we could. I think now looking back, there are things we could have done a little differently, but I couldn't be more proud of the job that our entire crew did. Not just me or Ted or Kaylee Dion. Ted McInerney had been here for what, I think 4 weeks?
6 weeks.
Yeah, 6 weeks. And poor kid. I mean, I told him, I said, hey, look, here's where we're going. It was almost like going into combat. I'm going to tell you what it's going to be like, but you're not going to believe me until you see it. And my team, Kaylee, both did a fantastic job. They followed my lead, and they really did a super job. So I'm proud of the fact that we were able to help. But it was the people in the field that really saved lives. It wasn't just us. I stood in front of a wall, but Marlon Price is on the side of a mountain with a EF4 tornado tearing through a city, and he's got a camera on it showing. There's so many people that were getting those tornadoes live. I think we put 3 or 4 on live that day, which I don't know. I don't think it's ever been done. One maybe, but we had the Cordova tornado as it crossed I-22 live. We had the Tuscaloosa tornado. Then we had the Birmingham and Coleman minutes after. So it was just crazy. I mean, the thought that we would ever have that many tornadoes on live TV in one day, I don't know if you'll ever get that again.
In the days and weeks after that storm, when you were able to, I guess, see the magnitude of the destruction that these storms had caused, had you ever seen anything like that?
Absolutely not. I've been to a war zone. When I was a reporter in Montgomery, I flew into Bosnia-Herzegovina. It was a city called Sarajevo, which actually hosted the Olympics at one point. And I've been into that war zone, and it was worse. Honestly, honest to goodness, it was worse than the war zone that I went into.
I remember when my parents came down to help us try and salvage what we could and take us back home after the storm. I remember my dad, we were walking through the streets down by Rosedale, and I just remember him saying, it's like a bomb went off. And it just looked like a massive bomb had hit multiple parts of the city.
That's a perfect analogy, because everything was flattened. I mean, it was just debris is all it was. And I remember saying on the air that it's going to cross McFarland and University. But right after I said that, I realized DCH is there. And this is a tornado that would do substantial damage to that, probably kill 40 or 50 people in the hospital at least. And when it went through Rosedale, that was when it was really getting angry, and it was just so violent. But it did, everything it went through. I remember seeing debris flying off of that tornado while we were watching it live, and I knew those were cars, and I knew there would be people in there. But the fact we didn't lose more is remarkable. I really thought we would have 100 to 200 people gone that day in Tuscaloosa, and we were very fortunate.
Now we're 3 years later. I know for myself, every year it's hard to believe that it's been that long since such a, I guess, big event, especially in my life. What has just that whole day, that whole process, even the months after, taught you?
Well, it has taught me to appreciate the life that we have, because I was able to be a part of something that I was able to help, but I also, this was kind of like, I don't want to use the analogy, but almost in a way, it was like a September 11th for us in Alabama. The magnitude was so big, and your mind I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Plus, I was exhausted, I was tired, but it changed me as a father, as a husband. That could have been my home. That could have been anybody's home. And I realized that we have to take this seriously. Will every tornado be like that? Absolutely not. Will we have every day that we have severe weather be like that? No. The chances are very slim. We could have it again, but that was April 27th. We have to focus on severe weather as it comes and pay attention to it. But I struggled with it for a long time. I mean, I still do, honestly. I'm not ashamed to say it now. I mean, I've realized I've had to sit down with a friend of mine, Dr. Josh Claypo, who Dr. Josh is on with us here. He and I are very good friends, and I've had to sit down with him a couple times ago. I can't shake the dream. I keep seeing it, and I can't get my reoccurring dream, which is crazy, but I can see the tornado just as it was on TV, but I can't get into the studio. I can't find the right door. That's how much it affected me, because that feeling of not being able to reach out and help and do anything. So I'm running up and down this hall right here behind us in my dream, and I cannot shake it. And then periodically it pops up, but it is what it is. It was very dramatic, but I learned a lot about how we need to be prepared.
I know for me, I always look at, in the months after that, I was trying to glean, take things away from it, try and turn the negative situation somehow into a positive. And I know each year when April rolls around for myself, it's a very vivid, I guess, reminder and a way to jog my mind back into a place where it should be, just to be grateful for the things I have, and understanding of the fact that, life can change in a moment's notice. And just not to take anything for granted, because we always think things like this happens in the movies. Mm-hmm. It happens to other people. It will never happen to me. Exactly. And April is always, I guess, a special month in many ways for a lot of us, and that's the way what it's definitely taught me as a person.
And that's what we would hope for. And I've never taken severe weather to where it's not serious. And that day, I knew, and professionally, that's what I've been trained for. And certainly, that's one of those things that, you always have in the back of your mind, there's going to be a big day, and that's what we had. But I think it grabbed everybody's attention, and that's what we needed. We needed people to have their attention grabbed. I just didn't want to lose 240-some people, 250 people in our state because of it. But it did certainly get everybody's attention, and got a lot of people prepared, which is what we needed.
You said you've been doing this for 25 years, or at the time about 25 years.
Yeah, I'm old, Seabass. I'm old enough to be your dad, man. I kid.
So it's probably a safe bet that you've been wall to wall and covered multiple severe storms countless times. After April 27th, the next time you did it, was there kind of a change? And because I imagine you had done it so much that the next severe event, while you do always take it seriously, it doesn't necessarily affect you in a certain way. What was it like the next time you had to cover a severe event, or you started seeing models telling you that there's a potential threat for more severe weather?
Yeah, it put a knot in my stomach, I can tell you that. But the blessing that I think that we got out of all that was after the 27th, we didn't have much more at all. And it was very quiet. We needed that. We needed that to heal. And, you know, I think that was something God put into place for us. You know, I feel like God brought me here to be a chief meteorologist at this place for that event, for whatever else he needed or needs at the time, and to make the decisions that we did. Because if we wouldn't have sent the people to the right places, and, you know, I mean, there was a lot of luck involved, but also having them in the right spot was so important. The next one that we had, though, was January, and that's when we lost the young teen girl that was over in East Jefferson County. And I remember going to the visitation there, and just to see the family. I said, I know you don't know me, but I just wanted to tell you that I'm thinking about you guys, because I saw that tornado on radar and was talking about it going through, and everybody was hypersensitive then. But it's not a bad thing, and it encouraged so many people to have weather radios, to have our phone app, whatever it is. The sirens have been updated in many places that were being ignored, and you know, those sirens are so important for people who are outside, maybe jogging or working in their garden, whatever it may be, and just having that weather radio, that saves lives. And the family of that young girl, beautiful girl, they said if we'd had a weather radio, we would have been able to get her out of there in time. But, you know, we're learning a lot. We still learn a lot about weather, and I think we have a lot that we have to, I don't know if we'll ever be able to learn it completely.
Before we wrap it up, you've already kind of hit on weather radios and the importance of them. Is there anything else you want to tell the listeners to keep them prepared, or just always kind of be aware of storms? Is there anything else prep-wise you want to tell them?
I think one thing that we learned that just blows my mind, I've never even thought about it. 15 years ago, I was telling people, hey, put a helmet on. Put a bike helmet, a football helmet, anything, because most of our injuries and deaths were trauma to the head. And that was, we actually had a family that their son did that, and they were hit directly in Hueytown. And he was pulled right out of their home, right out of his mom's arms, landed on his head, but he had a baseball helmet on because he heard me say that. You know, we need to wear helmets, and it saved his life. And so those are things that are important. But the one thing that I learned that I think is most important is people make sure that you have a pair of shoes with you. And, you know, you think about that. Why do you need shoes if a tornado's coming? Well, in the event that a tornado hits and you don't have shoes on, yeah, exactly, Josh is, yeah. You can't walk around. You got nails sticking out of boards, you've got glass, you've got sharp edges, and you have a hard time getting around. So when you go to a place of safety, take some shoes with you.
Before we wrap up, where can the listeners follow you on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and the likes, to keep up with everything you do?
That you can follow me at Mark Prater CBS 42 on Facebook. I have a fan page on there, and also Mark Prater on Twitter. So those are places that you know, you can catch up with me, and I may be tweeting something about my horse or my kids, but usually it's about weather and what's going on.
We appreciate you joining us today. We'll have a lot of content coming out this week on CBS42.com, just leading up to that 3-year anniversary of that storm outbreak on April 27th. For Sebastian and for Mark Prater, I'm Josh Savadil, and until next time, thanks for listening.